Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon. I'm the CEO and co-founder with Impetus Digital. At Impetus Digital, we've built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools. We work with life science companies from across the globe, helping them to do everything from virtual advisory boards, steering committees, medical education, investigator protocol committees, and even with our recent launch of the Insight Events platform, we help life science companies with big, hackathons, sales and MSL training, and everything in between. But more importantly, at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from these big, hairy, audacious conversations, we can all work to, with some of the leading edge thinkers, digital provocateurs, we can all work to collectively and positively disrupt healthcare. But it doesn't just end with starting the conversation. We need to sustain them. This is the exact reason why we create a series of asynchronous and synchronous touch points over time. So all the stakeholders that you work with, physicians, payers, allied healthcare providers, patients, can all work to start thinking about some of these really interesting ideas, creating new protocols, procedures, processes, and moving these ideas forward. So I'm really thrilled to have one of these leading edge thinkers with me today. This is actually Erin Russell. Erin is a leader as well as an operator with demonstrated expertise in driving digital innovation in the healthcare industry. She's very passionate about making healthcare better for consumers. So currently, she's the founder and CEO of a company called Health Grizzly. It's a consumer digital health company that's focused on improving healthcare access as well as choice. She's also an advisor and the interim chief product officer for a company called Curio Digital Therapeutic. It's a stealth digital health startup in women's health. Prior to her current role, Erin founded a company called Spotlight. It was an innovative approach to consumer engagement using digital therapies in the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. And it was also a finance company at Allergan Corp. She also has experience working at many large organizations, including Allergan and Schering-Plough, which is now Merck & Company, with an established track record in leading and operating brands and business units. Erin has a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Arizona and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Welcome, Erin. So happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I love it. I love the fact that you specialized in sales, technology, the STEM area. We're starting to see more and more women coming into this space, but more importantly, that you did this and also decided to become a founder and an entrepreneur. This again is a little bit more rare. I'd love to get your perspective on through your journey, how you end up in the spot that you are today.
Sure. Certainly as we all look back over our careers, it is very hard to predict. I think in many cases where exactly you'll end up. And in my case, that certainly is very true. I first came into the healthcare industry because I loved the combination of science and business, but fundamentally really wanted to do something with my life where I was helping people. And that's why I came into healthcare. While in big pharma, I had a chance to do that. I had a chance to really learn how to manage a business and lead a team within what has become an increasingly complex healthcare system. And that was fantastic. And then I saw this opportunity to really leverage digital technology to be able to educate and motivate consumers and drive them to action. And that's what led to the founding of Spotlight. And I did that with Spotlight within the medical aesthetics business. And after I exited Spotlight, I knew I wanted to continue to do something where I was helping people. I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but I also knew that I wanted to do something across the spectrum of healthcare, where I was really helping people regardless of what their condition happened to be, and regardless of what their current situation was. And that's really what led to me founding Health Grizzly. My role as a founder and how I came to be a founder was really that I had a passion for changing things for the better, and I didn't see anyone currently doing it. And so I decided to do it myself.
Lovely. You come from the pharmaceutical industry, which, as we know, is a very different animal. It has its pros, cons, got its idiosyncrasies, and lots of great things about it. But what did you find was fundamentally different for you in terms of mindset, moving from being in that space and going into a startup? What were some of the key foundational principles that you would share with other startups or entrepreneurs?
Sure. There are obviously several differences. I think one thing is not necessarily as specific to the pharmaceutical industry, but probably more to any large organization. And many of pharmaceutical companies are large organizations by definition, right? They have to grow big to they need the funding to be able to fund the clinical studies in order to bring these amazing and in many cases life-saving medications to market. And so they're large. And anytime you have a large organization, you have a hard time really kind of moving quickly. You have a hard time really being open to trying new things. And for me, that was the biggest difference, and really the biggest opportunity for freedom coming into the startup world, right? Like this openness to being able to try new things, test frequently. Don't just, spend time working on your computer on PowerPoint slides and trying to convince people that something is the right thing to do. Figure out what you think is the right thing to do, talk to the customer and test it frequently. That change in mindset, I would say is probably one of the bigger differences.
That's a really, really awesome thing. And we're seeing a growing trend, if you will, to more and more people, especially young people coming out of university and others. Like the economy is changing, and COVID-19 has accelerated that. We saw that we were moving into this more entrepreneurial economy, but it has certainly been accelerated. And we're seeing this kind of K economy, opportunity or progression, and how things are modifying. We're seeing all these changes with employment and this natural progression of the way things are just going to move. So if you were to speak to somebody who is in pharma, who may be thinking about a career change, or somebody just coming out of school, what would be some of the tips that you would harness them, if you will, for them to set something up from the get-go and to be successful?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to just be clear. Like, if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, I love the pharmaceutical industry. I think you can do that. You can be innovative within the pharmaceutical industry. There are a lot of companies that are very innovative, but it does require for you to really adopt that growth mindset, if you will, and be open to innovation and open to doing things potentially in a different way. There are a lot of examples within the industry of that, and often those examples are coupled with very great and encouraging success stories. And so I think if you're in that situation where you happen to be working in the pharma industry and you feel the need to do something else, you may be able to do that within the industry. In fact, frankly, that's what I did when I founded Spotlight. And it was such an incredible experience. And so I'd highly recommend for them to think about doing that. I think it is advice for how to get going, whether it's within an industry or whether it's as a startup. I think the first thing you have to do is figure out, what do you have a passion for? What really drives you? It's no mistake that a lot of founders of startups have a very personal story at the core of why they founded a company. That is the case because it's hard to start a company from scratch. It's not like, you wake up and you say, I want to start a company, and then all of a sudden it materializes in front of you. You have to build it brick by brick. Even if it's online in a virtual company, it's still brick by brick, and it feels like that some days. And so to be able to have that conviction, to be able to stick with it through all of the ups and downs that happen, I think often you do have to have that personal kind of dedication and conviction that you're doing something that you're very passionate about, that means something to you. And so I think the first step is really figuring out, what is that? What is it that means something to you? What is it that drives you, and what do you have passion for, and what do you want to do about it? And then from there, honestly, the sky's the limit. You'll be able to find your way and be very successful.
I love that you actually approach this from the entrepreneurial perspective. COVID has a lot of tragedy associated with it, but I think there's many things in terms of the silver lining, including the acceleration of the adoption of technology at the pharmaceutical level. So I think it's a very exciting time to be an entrepreneur. And I think that a lot of companies, come push or pull, or if there was just natural proclivity for this, or some people might have had their hand forced in it. It's an opportunity to really adopt, like you said, the growth mindset. So huge advocate for everything you've said. I love the idea as well, too, of you talking about purposeful, reasoning, if you will, of what it is that you're doing. So important. So let's actually talk about the purpose behind Health Grizzly. I know we talked a little bit about how you went from Spotlight into this, but what was really the mission or the premise behind you launching this?
Sure. Our vision for Health Grizzly really is to make accessing healthcare as easy as it is to do anything else online. There's no reason why that can't be the case. And the reality is right now it's not. And so our mission is very straightforward. It's to find people the healthcare that they need that fits their individual needs. And we're doing that by bringing the vast and growing universe of virtual care together with personal health guides to help people find that care. The reality is consumers, and we're based in the US, consumers in the US especially are paying more and more money year over year for healthcare. Consumers are the second highest spender on healthcare behind only the federal government, which is just absolutely astonishing. And yet only about 12% of consumers have the health literacy needed to be able to successfully navigate the system on their own. It's very complicated. It's very challenging, and there are a lot of options, and options are good, but you'll also have to make sure if there are a lot of options that you find the right type of care for you, so that you as the actual consumer of the healthcare are able to improve your health. And that's what we do at Health Grizzly. We help people find that care.
I just think it's so brilliant. And I'm really curious, Erin, on what the world at Health Grizzly looked like prior to COVID, where you were basically consolidating a series of digital and non-digital healthcare services, almost like a yellow pages or an online, guide, if you will, like a place where people are going in to find information. And what the world looked like after COVID. Did you notice a marked difference in people participating, leveraging, referring to your site? What did that look like?
So COVID is, as you said, it's been completely devastating in many ways, of course. And I think we've had, as a society and as a world, there's a huge amount of collective loss, whether you know someone personally who's passed away, or whether you just have that sense of loss due to lost experiences, right? Lost shared experiences due to lockdowns and lost graduations and things like that. And so there's been a tremendous impact. But at the same time, there definitely is this other impact that COVID has had that you pointed out, right? This impact on general acceptance of telehealth. And that is huge. But there's another impact too that's resulted from COVID, and that is that the amount of money and funding going into digital health ventures is it had been picking up over the years, but it's just absolutely skyrocketed. The last 5 years, $40 billion has gone into digital health ventures. Many of those ventures are very focused on, are very consumer focused. In the first quarter of this year alone, almost $7 billion went into digital health venture funding. And all of that money is resulting in these really incredible companies that are available to help people. And to help people in ways that really transcend geographies and that provide an avenue and an opening into care for people who never had that opportunity before, just based on where they happen to geographically be located. And I think that's super exciting. And so COVID, what COVID has led to, this increase in funding and this increased acceptance of telehealth and virtual care, those two drivers, those are really changing, I think, the face of healthcare. And I don't see it going away at all, even after we get through this pandemic and see the light at the end of the tunnel, which I think many of us are starting to hope for. That's not changing, and healthcare has definitely changed as we know it. And I think that's a super exciting thing.
Absolutely. So how are people finding your site? So tell us a little bit about what the customer journey is. There's obviously various vested people, people who have a vested interest in this, including employers and providers and patients. But tell us a little bit about how people enter into your ecosystem.
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, we're not fully launched yet. So for anyone watching or listening, we would love for you to come to our site, check us out at healthgrizzly.com and sign up for the wait list. We will be fully launching later this year, and there is some space available now. And so definitely sign up now and stay tuned. In general, I would say we're bringing people to our site and making sure that they're aware of our service from a number of different angles. You know, part of it is through employers. There's a very established employer-funded health system in our country, and there are self-insured employers who really are very much aligned with us in trying to help people find the care that they need. And we make it very easy for them to be able to offer a very real benefit that's customized and individualized for their employees. And so that is one avenue. And then the other avenue, and I feel very personally passionate and strongly about this, is really the direct-to-consumer approach. You know, I think there are a lot of people who are out there who are in these quote unquote healthcare deserts where they have a hard time accessing healthcare, whether that's geographic or whether that's structural in nature, that they have a hard time getting the care they need. But it does exist and they can access it. And we want to be able to help bring that to them. And so the direct to consumer approach is also very important, I think.
Brilliant. Your database is full, like chock full, like it literally over 700 virtual health services and growing. So people are just signing up, they're finding this site, you're selling this concept because it's a great marketing opportunity. How do people end up, and is it free? What's the business model associated with providers?
So we, on the provider side, we're not currently charging providers. We will at some point have a revenue stream from providers that will be based on, profile optimization and marketing. And I think that's important. It won't be based on number of signups or leads, because I think that creates the wrong type of incentive. We exist to help people find the care that they need. And we want to make sure we're always fully aligned with doing that and doing the best that we can for our members. And so the providers, right now, we have everyone in our database because we built it from the ground up. It's an incredible amount and wealth of information that is available to help people decide, what is the best care for them. In terms of others, employers pay for the participation in the service, of course, and then also consumers can as well, when we make that available, pay for a membership.
Lovely. Great way to explain the business model as it currently stands, which, as you know, things are always constantly changing, which makes it exciting. Yeah. And so when we think about this and we think about just the sheer volume of options, we oftentimes think about the paradox of choice. What is the searchability and how have you tagged information so that people can have a more seamless approach to finding what they're looking for?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Everyone wants a lot of options, right? Because you want to have that choice. But if you have too many options, it gets overwhelming and you don't know what to do and you kind of get paralyzed, right? And so that's the great thing about having a lot of options, though, if you're able to put that together in a way that is consumer friendly and that is not only approachable and accessible, but also something that matches with what those individual needs are. And what I mean by that is, because, by the way, no two services are exactly equal, even if they're treating people or helping people with the same condition. You may have someone who's looking for a mental health service, and if you have two people looking for mental health services, they may have very different preferences. One person may be a little bit hesitant and be more comfortable in doing something that's in a group setting. And there are services that are available that can help them in that way virtually. And then there may be someone else who is just, really a lot more private and wants to do something just one-on-one. And again, there are other different services that can help them. And knowing and understanding that preference is actually a really important part of this, right? It's like knowing the questions to ask as you're going through that search to be able to best match people. Another great example is for people, let's say, diabetes. There are a lot of diabetes virtual care services that are available, doing incredible things, helping people with diabetes. But you have to consider, how is that person currently managing their blood sugar? How are they currently managing their condition? If you have someone who is currently monitoring their blood sugar with a continuous glucose monitor, well, they need to find a service that can integrate with that seamlessly, that can help them, that can really elevate their care of that condition and management of that condition to the next level. Some services do that and some don't. And so you want to be able to, that's really critical for them, to be able to find them a service that fits their needs. Or maybe you have someone who has diabetes who is more interested in the remote monitoring or health alert features that some of the services offer. Well, in that case, another service might be best for them. And so understanding those very consumer-focused individual needs is absolutely critical in not only initially finding people the right care, but I think what's most important here is getting the engagement from the end user of that care and the utilization of that care so that they continue on with it and actually benefit from it and improve their health.
So how does the system work? Is it a self-serve search tool with a smart algorithm and tagging system for that? Or I know you mentioned also that you have care navigators and you have this whole piece around personal health guides. Are these real human beings or are these just robotics?
Well, you can't do everything with robots. No, we try to automate as much as possible, of course, but we do have a team of actual people. And I think that's important. I actually learned that when I was at my last venture, running Spotlight. We had a team who was available to help answer very specific questions. And you want to be able to automate as much as possible, of course, and make it self-serve. And for some people that's sufficient and that works. But the reality is being able to tap out and go to that action personal health guide, a very, very key thing to do and is very helpful for some people. So I think I am personally a very big experiences with technology where you're literally just chatting with a bot and ending up and getting really mindset anyone should be having, especially as it relates to healthcare.
Yeah, huge. So this is something that we're hearing more and more and more, is that the personal touch, the human, the physician, the nurse, that level of empathy is absolutely huge in terms of healthcare maintenance and management of one's progression with a condition or a disease is really great. So it's nice to see that those people are actually human. And so I'm also just curious about potentially some of the obstacles, if you will, of accessing this portal or these services. We hear a lot about this issue of the digital divide. Some unfortunate communities that might be underserved or underprivileged who may not have access to things like internet. You may think it's hard to believe in this day and age, but there are people, or not having access to specific devices. And you mentioned again, the uprising of digital health or telehealth. So how does that kind of come across, or how do you access those populations?
That's what's so great about all of the different options that are available, right? And by the way, there are definitely communities that exist where people don't have easy internet access, and you have to be able to figure out how to work with them. They do typically have mobile access and cell phones, but you need to be able to find a solution that doesn't, require a lot of bandwidth. And the great thing about all the options that exist are that there are options that are available to those people, right? That really work with them in a way that meets them where they are. And ultimately, that's what all of this is about. When you look at digital health, when you look at all of the kind of the virtual care revolution that's happening right now, it's all about meeting people as the consumers of healthcare where they're at. And if they happen to be somewhere where they don't have good bandwidth or they don't have good internet access and they just have a mobile phone with very limited cell coverage, then you have to be able to meet them there. You have to be able to text with them to be able to help them find the care that they need. And there are services that are doing that and doing it very successfully. And so I think that's one thing that's super cool, is that we now have the ability with all of these different options available to really make whatever it is that that person is looking for, to make it a reality and help them find it.
One thing that we oftentimes, I know that you mentioned that right now your platform is really focused on the US, but one of the challenges moving forward as we start really thinking globally is potentially access to global thought leaders, global practitioners, people who might be very specialized in a very specific item. How is that going to be made possible in the future, especially when we think about geographical boundaries, regulations, various other controls like privacy? Is there any thinking on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a lot of regulations, as you pointed out, that come into play there. There's a very active ecosystem around, expert opinions in this concept, and they've been very, very impactful and I think very helpful. But with that in mind, I think as you think globally, like there are, obvious limitations relative to some of what can be done in the regulations there. My hope is that we figure out a path forward there. It's not, I think, as easy as some of the other things that we're working on now, frankly, because there are, imposed limitations within the industry. But I have no doubt that we'll figure it out. I think everything is becoming more globalized, and if we have to basically take a digital technology that's working in one geography or in one country, and then literally like replace that and bring it over to the other geography, well, that's not that hard to do. And that's something that's very possible. And if that's the way to do it, then that will be done. It's definitely very possible. And so I think that may be more of the more likely path forward immediately. But I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that we can get there for sure.
I love it. And so one would ask the same question around, again, we live in a global village. We have like every possible language you can imagine. And that routinely, that's oftentimes been a challenge in healthcare. But now with things like instant translation, the question comes down to what do you do synchronously versus asynchronously to be able to accommodate people's language requirements? What is Grizzly Health or Health Grizzly thinking around language?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the same thing we think about consumers in general. You have to meet people where they are, right? And so if people prefer to find care in a different language, then you have to figure out a way to make that something that's possible. There are actually some virtual care services here in the US. So many people, speak Spanish. I'm originally from Arizona and California, and so I kind of grew up understanding that. And people are more comfortable finding care in often they're a different language other than English. And I think being able to help them find care in that way is actually super important and super powerful. Those services also exist. Whether that's done through synchronous versus asynchronous, I mean, that's one way to approach it. Certainly, I think that's one potential solution, but it's also finding practitioners that speak that same language, right? Where people can get that care. That's another way of approaching it. Either way, it all comes down to you have to meet people where they are to be able to get them to not only first access the care, but to actually utilize it.
So we're talking about a platform that really is kind of like the gigantic encyclopedia of every, and growing of everything that's possible that one could need in their healthcare space. So is Health Grizzly really just brokering that relationship? Where does it play? For example, if somebody has a particular telehealth service, is there an API and then it exists and gets administered through your platform? Or is it really just brokering the relationship and then people divert and go outside of it? And if so, how does the impact of that brokered relationship, pivot, like how does it get measured in terms of the success factor? Like what exactly is your key performance indicator? Is it the fact that you made a connection, or is the fact that that service actually had a positive outcome on their health?
So I would look at it more as we're helping people really change the way that they approach their health, right? And find the care that they need. But it's not just a one and done. That's part of it. Certainly, there are often urgent needs, or there are needs to manage a chronic condition. It's really an ongoing relationship. It's an approach to wellness in a way that really we're serving as that partner on someone's wellness and health journey to help them not only find the care that they need to improve the management of whatever chronic condition they might have, but also in continuing to check in with them to make sure that they're staying on top of their care, that they don't have any other needs, that they're achieving the health goals that they set for themselves. And to figure out, exactly how does that compare to some of their friends who are also on a similar journey. There's a lot of really cool things that can be done when you really embrace this approach to health and wellness. And that's what we're trying to do for our members. We're with them every step of the way. I think so often in this world, as we confront these health challenges, we end up in a situation where we feel very alone. We don't really know what to do or where to go or where to turn, and we struggle, and we may find ourselves in a doctor's office talking to them about whatever the condition is, but they may not be the right doctor for us for a variety of reasons, right? And so then all of a sudden we don't go back, or we don't actually manage our condition the way that we probably should be. It's important to have that trusted partner, and that's what we're really looking to be for our members.
Yeah, it sounds like it's an amazing, amazing service, and so timely as well. And so as I'm thinking about people coming in this process, we talked a lot about searchability, tagging, we talked about the navigators, et cetera. Are there also things like questionnaires that are kind of smart, not smart contracts, but that do almost like an analysis in the back end with smart machine learning algorithms that then start to cater the kinds of information that might get pushed out in the follow-ups, maybe in the blog articles? Tell us a little bit about, if it's not there yet, if it's something that's going to be part of a future rendition.
Yeah, we don't currently have that included, but I'm a big fan of consumer kind of driven, self-selected questionnaires, right, and surveys. Allowing people to select into whatever it is that they're interested in, rather than trying to figure it out yourself. You're always going to be more successful. And so I have a lot of experience in doing that. I spent a lot of time doing that when I was over at Spotlight, and it's very powerful. And I'm a big believer in it. I think that there's a lot that we can do within healthcare if we do more of that.
Beautiful. We're thinking about pharmaceutical companies and the array of different programs. Again, you've been with Allergan and others. We talk a lot about things like patient support programs, which are these really nicely packaged programs that have everything from how to navigate your insurance, to get reimbursement on products, to various other sort of adherence programs, et cetera. How could a pharmaceutical company leverage Health Grizzly?
That's a great question. Right now, we're not working with pharmaceutical companies directly. But that being said, I think there's a lot that big pharma can do as it pertains to patient support, and really thinking about the patient ultimately as a consumer. And that's, I think, really the key, and something that a lot more companies, you're starting to see it a lot more. There's the approach to the consumer side of marketing within pharma has really changed significantly over the last decade or so. It used to be that direct to consumer advertising and consumer marketing within pharma was literally just figuring out what your ad would be and how many GRPs you needed, and that's about it. Really, that was basically the focus. And we've really evolved from there, and a lot of that is because there has been this big impact and really avenue opening up relative to digital technology and the ability to reach people, as I said, where they're at through social media, through other digital marketing techniques. That has made it possible to really get a lot closer to the patient, get a lot closer to that end user, the consumer of healthcare, and in this case for big pharma of the medications that they're producing. And I think that's good for everyone. That's really better for everyone. And I encourage everyone in big pharma to continue to do that.
Yeah, precisely. You're building a cohort, if you will, of dedicated and committed and interested patients of a variety of different colors, kaleidoscopes, conditions. It's a wonderful ecosystem, where you're going to be building that as people add themselves to the waiting list. So one of the things that comes up a lot is this concept of, continuous discovery of wonderful medications, services, and even medical devices, even if it's just software. So with this is the requirement to get people enrolled in clinical trials, decentralized or hybrid or otherwise. How can Health Grizzly be leveraged for these kinds of trials, or, if at all?
I don't think we're currently looking to leverage Health Grizzly in that way. That being said, I do think when you think about clinical trials and recruitment for clinical trials, as you pointed out, is an ongoing challenge. It really is. I'm very familiar with it. I've worked on the edges of that for a lot of my career, and there are, I think, a lot of things that we can do to be able to try to find people, but ultimately, a lot of clinical trial recruitment is very much like more of a, I would say, bricks and mortar approach, and for better or worse. And so I think there are a lot of companies trying to crack that right now within digital health, and I think that they'll be able to do it. There's no doubt to me that there's a better way for us to be able to recruit people and to find the right people who are willing to participate in these clinical trials. So I'm very optimistic about the future there. And I do think that it's an important thing because it will only serve to speed development and approval of many of these medications.
Health Grizzly is going to be so pivotal for the management of basically chronic diseases. We talk about the cardiometabolic syndrome and all these other emanating situations and conditions that result because of these situations, people's eating habits, exercise, all these sorts of things. How do you see an organization like yours or a platform like yours changing the mindset around sick care to well care and really changing or pivoting to getting more into proactive or predictive places so that we don't get into an area where we're reacting to a situation?
You know what's really incredible is our choices matter. It's actually scientifically proven that our behavior has a direct impact on our health. There's a scientific study that I just absolutely love, which shows that you don't have to change everything, by the way, and become like a complete, health nut marathon runner. If you just change like one or two things and one or two behaviors, you can have a positive impact on your health and on your outcomes. And not only that, but that study also found that if you make that change after a diagnosis, and the diagnoses were things like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, these are very serious diseases and conditions. If you make those behavior changes after you have already received that diagnosis, you can still have a positive impact on your health. You can still make a difference. And so I think what's important is that the vast majority of people don't realize that and don't know that. And that's one thing that I'm really excited about. I'm so excited about the opportunity to be able to bring that type of information and empowerment to people because it really is true. Every single day we make choices. We make a lot of different choices. And those choices make a lot of differences in our life. The choices that we make relative to our health, and there's a very short list of things, of behaviors that we can focus on. And it's not things that are insurmountable and difficult to do. Those choices can really have a very positive impact, and they can lead us to living a better life. We've done a great job as, if you think about humankind, we've done a great job of extending our lifespan. We continue to live longer and longer and longer, and that's great. But what's not often advertised is that we also are kind of not healthier. We have more and more chronic conditions the longer we live. And we have this huge chronic condition epidemic that's happening where there's a huge increase in a lot of these conditions. And so while we may be living longer, we're not necessarily living healthier, and we're not necessarily getting that quality of life that I think we really could achieve. And I think that's where we're really turning now. Healthcare and medicine has really been focused over the last several years in extending lifespan through a variety of ways. And now I think that it's time, and we're starting to see that tide really shift to not just extending lifespan, but also improving the quality of that life and improving our management of these chronic conditions so that we can enjoy that longer lifespan.
So beautifully said, and absolutely, we would all agree with that. One of the things that comes to mind is as we're thinking about the choices we make and about some of these standard things that we hear all the time about increasing, improving sleep hygiene and, reducing stress and all these sort of standard things, regardless of what doctor you go see or what diet you're on. There's some things that are just fundamentals. Is they all come down to this idea of 1% incremental changes, habit formation, and automaticity. How can Health Grizzly help around this idea of adherence and helping to maintain and sustain these really core behavioral and attitudinal changes?
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity there. As you just pointed out, look, I think having a service or having Health Grizzly as a partner, right, to be able to have those constant check-ins, to be able to kind of like help you stay on top of those goals that you're setting, I think is extremely powerful, and potentially, will change the dynamic of exactly what's happening. We all need support, right? Like it's not easy, even if it's just a 1% change, it's not easy to change things that we've been doing for years and years and years. And so having that support and just reminder, and also permission to not be perfect, right? Like we're not talking about perfection. If I'm trying to do a better job, let's say I want to get back into running and I missed running yesterday, and that's kind of like putting me off. That's okay. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. We all have a bad day. Not a big deal. Just try again tomorrow. And I think that approach and support is what's very sorely needed and somewhere where we can really help.
Absolutely. When employers are providing your platform as this value add service, I'm curious about how it may be attached to insurance companies, looking at metrics such as, improved health, certain other kinds of factors associated, and then there's incentivizations given to some of the employees of those companies. Is there those connections right now? And how are employers being, I guess, incentivized, if you will, to use your platform for their employees?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, to be able to show like real outcomes and improvement. Obviously, that takes time. Look, we're still a fairly new platform, and so I don't have the scientific results to be able to show you. But I will tell you that I am a very strong believer, and many other studies have shown when you have people who are taking active control of their health and actively managing it and improving the management of these chronic conditions, not only do they improve their health and live a healthier life, healthcare costs actually come down and everyone ends up being happier. And so I think that's where, if we just keep our eye on the prize, if you will, and on the end result, which is that in goal, which is that we want people to live a healthier life and improve their health. If we stay focused on that and help people along their journey, because it is a journey, then we'll be in good shape on everything else.
We're hearing a lot about the impact that COVID-19 has had on people's health, specifically on their mental wellness. We've heard a lot about unfortunate situations like increased suicide, addictions, other sorts of things. Is there some push from Health Grizzly on increasing the amount of care navigators and providers that focus specifically on those areas that are going to be part of your ecosystem, so that when you do launch the product, that you have the bandwidth to be able to accommodate requests coming in for those?
We definitely, look, absolutely. We go where our members go, right? And so if our members are looking for substance abuse help, or if they're looking for mental health care help, we have a number of options available for those conditions, and we'll help find people the care they need. It's so very important. And you're right, the COVID pandemic has been just, really challenging and very devastating for a number of people, and has led people to really have a lot of challenges that they maybe didn't have prior, right? Whether that's substance abuse or whether that's mental health challenges. And I think one thing that's important to remember is that what's important now that we're still in the pandemic, what's important now is that we we can change what we do, and we can just accept that things are the way that they are, and that what's important is that we actually take action to do something about how we're feeling and how we're acting and how we're reacting to the way things are. And so if we're starting to do something a little bit more that's unhealthy, or if we're starting to feel a certain way because of everything that's happened due to the pandemic, then it's important for us to recognize that as a first step. And after recognizing it, it's important for us to try to do something about it and to find care, and to know that you're not alone, that there are so many very expert people out there wanting to help you out. And I think that message is really critical, and something that we're seeing obviously a huge need for, based on everything that's happened recently.
One thing that we don't oftentimes talk about as much, because it's not, I mean, you're getting these like 1 in a million situations, but we're really talking about rare diseases. Really hard for people to get the diagnoses, the care, the clinical studies. Does this fit in at all in Health Grizzly?
Yeah, there are some services that are actually tailor-made for people with very specific rare diseases, autoimmune disorders. There are several things that do come up. Like people, there's, you name it, it's out there, right? Like that it's easy to focus on, let's say heart disease or diabetes are very common. And so there are a lot of options available for those, but there are also a lot of ventures and a lot of companies and virtual care services that have cropped up and have been founded by people who are very passionate about helping others. And often these are founded by people who had those rare diseases. And those companies do exist as well. And I feel very gratified and very good about being able to match someone with a service like that when it's fitting their needs, because, frankly, without them knowing that existed, they would have never been able to, find that care. And that's what's really super gratifying about everything, and really is at the heart of our mission and what we're trying to do.
One thing that's also on that line, where some countries are better than others in terms of the number of people specializing in this, but we're hearing more and more about the impact of genetic testing, genome testing. We've heard a lot about CRISPR, et cetera, but people planning for families, managing their diseases, all sorts of other things, and the need to access genetic counselors and coaches. I know that in Canada, for example, you could wait up to as long as 5 years before you can see somebody. So the need is really there, and there's a shortage or a lack of people with that specialized knowledge. Where does that fit in your platform as well?
Again, look, if someone's looking for it, it depends on their situation, right? Like there's actually a lot of, there's a huge growth in services that are available for people on the fertility side who are like looking into genetic testing related to a fertility journey. And so that's just one example where there are a lot of options available in services that can really fit those needs. Ultimately, there's also a lot of, going back, just the more general use case, if you will, right? Like general testing, or even more broadly, at-home diagnostics. There are a lot of things happening now that were never possible before. And again, those are services that people can find and that we can help connect them with. And so you're absolutely spot on in that there's a world of change happening out there, making all of these things that used to be, fairly limited to what you happen to hear about from your primary care physician, or what you happen to encounter in your neighborhood or in your local geography. Those things are all of those barriers are kind of falling away. And now we're able to access all of these things that really are super exciting. And that's what I'm personally just super, super excited about, because having all of that choice and the ability to access those services is really something that truly empowers the consumer ultimately. And I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And I'm actually just curious, in all of this process is just, there is a great opportunity for people to connect with each other, assist, create these tribes, communities, encouragement. We see a lot of these happening in Fitbit and Nike communities and many, many others. How is that sense of community, encouragement, finding tribes, how is that going to be built into this system?
Stay tuned. That's all I can say right now on that. I think it's really exciting too.
And the other thing as well too, just sort of like the giant Yelps or the tourism sites that we see and what have you. Is there going to be rating and ranking systems built in here so that people can, your communities can actually rate services? Is that going to be part of the plan as well? Or is that a secret that you'll be rolling out soon?
Stay tuned. I think I'm a big fan of reviews, a little bit less so personally of ratings. And this isn't speaking to exactly what we're going to have, but I think reviews are very helpful to people because it helps to identify what is good and or what that, if you're reviewing, whoever you're reviewing, what you liked, what you didn't like, things like that. And that helps someone else make a decision. And so I think that's really powerful. Ratings, I think across the board are just challenging because you don't know what they're being rated against and how it's being rated. The criteria are always opaque. I mean, it's kind of like, what does a rating mean? Depending on the different service that you're frankly looking at. And so I'm personally a huge fan of reviews, less so of ratings. But as it pertains to Health Grizzly, we're working on it. Just stay tuned.
Nice. I love it. And the last thing is we're hearing a lot more about things like that. We're kind of in a system in a world that's kind of gone beyond e-commerce. We're now talking a lot about social commerce. The idea about being into your favorite platform, and one day, Health Grizzly will be somebody's favorite platform. They come in and they're going to find different people, things, services that they want. And
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. And perhaps like being able to purchase services and other sorts of things right there in the platform. Is that, is social commerce something that Health Grizzly is also considering in the future?
I will never say that I'm not considering anything. Going back to what I said earlier about being open to try new things. So
that's awesome. I love your enthusiasm, Erin. It is such a breath of fresh air. And I really especially love your enthusiasm for the consumer, for empowering everybody in their general life to be able to be better, feel better, and just to basically accelerate the healthcare of the general population. So kudos to you. And I love and support everything that you're doing. I think we're all excited. For anybody who is interested in connecting with Erin in many, many different ways, signing up as a provider or potentially partnering, we will be leaving Erin's contact information in the show notes. So please be on the lookout for that. If you liked this show, we also encourage you to check out impetusdigital.com. If you're interested in having these kinds of discussions, finding out how you create a patient support program or do something interesting in an ecosystem like Health Grizzly, or you're just wanting to move a protocol or a strategy ahead, this is what we do asynchronously and synchronously through a series of touch points in the Impetus Insight platform. So I encourage you to check that out. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We would love if you could leave a review, not a rating, a review of our podcast so other people can find us. We want to thank everybody for your time today. Thank you, Erin, for an outstanding conversation. And we wish all of you a wonderful day ahead.